You're watching Newsfeed AM. Let's get into this conversation now. The Congress of South African Trade Unions has commended government's decision to increase the national minimum wage from 25 Rand 42 cents to 27 Rand 58 cents per hour from the 1st of next month. Now, the Trade Union Federation says the increase is a big relief for more than 6 million workers who are earning within the national minimum wage range. COSATU General Secretary is Phetoe, who joins me now for a much broader discussion around this. Mr. Phetoe, good morning to you and thank you for your time. I saw you earlier beaming with pride with what government has announced here. You've since issued a statement saying that this is exactly what you had recommended. Just explain to us the thought process with this particular increase. And I suspect what is pleasing for you is that this is slightly above inflation increase.
Well, thank you very much, Koli, and thank you very much to your viewers. Look, indeed, we do applaud the government, in particular the Department of Employment, Labour Minister Thula Ngesi, to accept the recommendation from the National Minimum Wage Commission. You will recall that when this National Minimum Wage Commission, based on the National Minimum Wage Act, was established in 2019, it was very tough. We were criticized by a number of people, but we're very happy, in particular as organized labor, in particular COSATU, that we have been continuing to engage on these things, on this issue of the national minimum wage. Last year, if you remember, in 2022, when we were making a recommendation for 2023, we said the national minimum wage should be equalized to everybody. The domestic workers by then were not receiving the same percentage like the farm workers and other sectors, but we were able to push at the level of the National Minimum Wage Commission that it must be equalized.
Yeah.
Meaning that the farm workers, domestic workers, security workers, whoever earn less than national minimum wage by then must be able to earn the same level as it is now, 25 Rand 48 cents. Now is going to 25 Rand 42, now is going to be 27 Rand 58. It was not easy. In fact, people that we must congratulate is the support and the consultation we had with our members on the ground, is the support we had with the fight in the National Minimum Wage Commission. It was not easy. We know, must tell these things, the public, that the business and certain individuals in government who are there in the national, were not supporting the increase that we've achieved, but we were able to push, and that's why we're saying we applaud and we're very happy that the national minimum wage increase, it is more than the inflation rate. Even, I think, Kolu must say these things is not enough, but we think it will make the change. It will make some few improvement in the life of the vulnerable workers. We know the cost of living, they are very high. We know what is happening currently with the economic crisis, our economy in South Africa, but also our call is that we must intensify the implementation of the National Minimum Wage Act, because there are those employers who still undermine. It's not because that they are not able to afford, but they undermine the legislation. That is why where I am now, I'm at Netleg Labour School. One of the issues that we're discussing is the amendment on the National Minimum Wage Act, particularly for the enforcement for those who are continuing to undermine. Because in terms of the Act, it says if you are not able to afford, you must apply for exemption. And when you apply for exemption, you meet with workers, or if the workers are organized under the trade union movement, you meet with them, you disclose your financial statement, and we are able to engage. That's on the basis that the exemption can be granted. Now what we see employers doing is a continuation of undermining this policy. So we're happy as COSATU that from the 1st of March, the national minimum wage will be increased with 8.5%, and we think that workers in the country, those who are part of the national minimum wage sectors, if that is not implemented, they have a responsibility to inform the trade union movement. And we're saying, as I said last time when I was talking about the issue of the attitude of certain individual managers, employees, in particular the SABC, including those who are leading the post office, the business rescue. As COSATU, we've decided when you respond with attitude and fire, we'll respond fire with fire. So those who are not complying, they must know that we're ready for them.
I wonder, when you mention the public broadcaster, the SABC, and I think you've also mentioned the post office, are you saying that these are the sort of employers who are not adhering to the National Minimum Wage Act? And when we talk about not adhering, you've mentioned those that simply are not paying attention at all to this national minimum wage, which means that they are not even implementing it. Are there specific offenders, serial offenders, in whatever sectors that you are now starting to target as completely ignoring the National Minimum Wage Act?
Yes, Goli, there are specific targets, there are specific sectors, there are specific individual farmers who are not complying. That's why I'm saying it's a sign of disrespect of the legislation that we have. The Employment of Labor Inspectorate, they're not doing enough in terms of making sure that they're able to visit these employers to make sure that they comply. You can go to CCMA, there are those, but I will not disclose them now here in public. But if you ask the question about the SABC broadcast, the SABC broadcast, why I'm mentioning them, it is because last year workers were agreed to the wage increase of 6%, but the SABC continued to undermine the legislation, including the collective bargaining, not wanting to pay the workers that increase, but also to pay workers a retrospective increase from April. They want to pay where it suits them from October and November, when the legislation or the collective agreement lapse in April. But some of these ministers that I may not mention, when they got an increase of 3%, they were able to get it as a retrospective. Some of these managers who got an increase, how much are they earning if they get an increase of 3%? How much is that? Based on what the SABC workers or journalists at the SABC are receiving.
Yeah.
Now, that's what I'm mentioning them. That is one of a sector that undermine the legislation that we have, including those who owe the workers at the post office today. They want to retrench about 6,000 workers when workers have not played any role in terms of destroying and stealing and putting post office where it is today. Those who did these things are now celebrating outside and workers are suffering. You know that they owe workers their monies, the pension fund, the medical aid that were deducted, all the third-party deduction was not paid, and there's a court order to pay workers their money. They're not doing that. What they want to do is to retrench workers, use the same workers to pay a Section 189 workers. That will not agree. I'm just mentioning them that when I say we'll respond fire with fire, I'm meaning such individual employers, including those who are not complying on the national minimum wage.
So while you are likely to come down like a ton of bricks on those employers who are ignoring this National Minimum Wage Act, I don't hear you speaking with the same vigor when it comes to the EPWP workers or the community workers, the community workers programs, because those are government-owned programs and they are not paying workers in line with the national minimum wage. Why would a government that has ensured that there is the implementation of such an act not adhere to its own laws?
Colin, I said all sectors, including government. If you look at to our submission to NEDLEC, to the National Minimum Wage Act, it talks about the undermining of the law, which include community health workers, which include the extended public works program. And let me tell you, COSATU program with the COSATU affiliate that are organizing those exits, that those workers must be employed as permanent workers, because the Labor Relations Act says any worker who works for more than 3 months, you have a responsibility as an employer to employ those workers as a permanent workers. That's what COSATU is fighting. The community health workers, you recall that Nehau in particular in Phetoe fought for some of those community workers to be employed as permanent workers. The PSCPC has a resolution for those workers to be employed as permanent workers. Now the Minister of Health and the Minister of Labor, they want to put those workers under the sexual determination. We are not going to agree. That's why we've rejected that report at the National Minimum Wage Commission worker. They want to put those workers. They've done a research, and their research comes back to us and say those workers, when they are put under sexual determination, they are going to earn 15% more than what is in the national minimum. Yes, it will be increased, but those will not be permanent work. They will not have benefits. The fight for COSATU that workers must be employed as permanent workers so that they are able to get benefits. So the extended purpose program is in our agenda, is in the discussion of the national minimum wage. We say, and they must be equalized. If you go to the municipalities, you'll find those workers are not receiving the same salaries. Yeah. Others, they pay workers 75 rand per day. Others, they pay them 100 rand. Others, they're using those workers for their political infighting within the political party that is leading that municipality. Yeah. So as COSATU was saying, those workers, they must unite. We're in the process to unite them. They are in the process to form their own union, but we're saying this, as much as they are in that process, some must organize those workers. They are under some in the municipality. As COSATU, we're taking a lead and campaign for those workers to be blended.
Very briefly.
As permanent workers. Thank you very much.
Very briefly, Mr. Phetoe. Final question.
Sure.
When this legislation came into effect in 2019, there was a lot of criticism, with many in the business sector saying this would lead to a jobs bloodbath. In less than a minute, would you say that those kinds of predictions have come to reality now, or would you say it's actually a non-starter, that conversation?
No, that's a non-starter, because even in terms of the research and the economic report, it tells you that some of the, particularly in the farming areas, there's an increment in terms of the growth, in terms of the job creation. There's no such thing. They can't give us a proof that says after the 2019 implementation of national minimum wage, there was in those sectors, there was this thing that is. So it's a non-starter for us. It is people who are trying to hide behind something that they could not hide, just to continue to undermine the legislation. These are some of those people who are undermining the legislation. These are part of the people who are about 30 to 40% of the non-compliance. And these are some of the people that we said to the National Minimum Wage Commission that we must put both the case at CCMA and a criminal offense to them, because it's stealing from the poor.